The studio lights hummed faintly, casting a sterile glow across the round table at center stage. Tonight wasn't just another broadcast, it was a live debate that the whole country was waiting for. On one side sat Donald Trump, visibly restless, shifting in his chair as the murmurs of the audience buzzed with anticipation. On the other side, calm and composed, sat Denzel Washington. His blazer was sharp, his posture steady, his face unreadable. He wasn't here to perform. He was here to confront. The moderator's voice cracked through the tension. Tonight, we're addressing the growing unrest in America, violence, protests, communities torn apart. Former President Trump, your critics say your rhetoric has poured gasoline on the fire. How do you respond? Trump leaned forward, smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Look, it's not my words. It's the radicals, the extremists, the fake media twisting everything I say. People love me, you know that. The rallies are huge, the support is tremendous. If violence happens, it's because people are passionate. That's called freedom. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Cameras caught the flickers of doubt across faces in the crowd. The air felt heavier now, like everyone knew the question wasn't truly answered. The moderator turned to Denzel. Mr. Washington, your response. For a moment, Denzel said nothing. He adjusted the mic slowly, deliberately. When he spoke, his voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of something undeniable. Passion doesn't burn down neighborhoods. Passion doesn't leave mothers burying their children. Words matter. And when a leader treats words like weapons, violence isn't passion, it's the result of carelessness, or worse, intent. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't hesitation. It was recognition. Something had shifted. Trump let out a sharp laugh, the kind that wasn't born from humor but from defense. He wagged a finger toward Denzel. Carelessness? Intent? You don't know intent. I built this country back up. People were proud again. You sit there acting like some saint, but without me, the streets would have been worse. People are angry because America was stolen from them. I gave them a voice. The words spilled fast, jagged, but the applause he expected never came. The studio was heavy with unease. Trump's tone, once commanding, now sounded strained, like a man clinging to a script that had lost its audience. Denzel didn't move right away. He leaned back, letting the silence press on Trump until the former president shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Then, slowly, Denzel leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the table. You gave them a voice? His eyes locked on Trump's, unwavering. No. You gave them permission. Permission to hate louder, to strike harder, to believe cruelty is patriotism. The audience stirred, whispers rippling like a current. Trump tried to interject, but Denzel's calm tone sliced through him before he could regain ground. You say people love you. Maybe some do. But leadership isn't about being loved, it's about being responsible for what your words unleash. And what your words unleashed, Mr. Trump, was not pride. It was pain. The crowd erupted, not with laughter or forced applause, but with something rawer, gasps, nods, scattered claps that grew louder. For the first time that night, Trump didn't smirk. He reached for his water glass, hand trembling ever so slightly, and the cameras caught it. The moderator's eyes darted between them, sensing the shift. Mr. Washington, he said cautiously, are you suggesting former President Trump is directly responsible for the violence we've seen? Denzel's gaze never wavered. I'm not suggesting, he said evenly. I'm saying it. The room froze. The moderator blinked, stunned by the weight of Denzel's declaration. Across the room, Trump's jaw tightened, the familiar orange glow of his face deepening into red. He leaned forward, voice raised, the microphone crackling as he barked, "That's a lie. That's a damn lie. I never told anyone to be violent. I told them to fight for their country, to love their country. If a few people got carried away, that's not on me, that's on them." Gasps scattered through the audience. The phrase, "a few people," echoed like a bad note. Denzel tilted his head slightly, his calm expression unchanged, though his eyes gleamed with something sharper now. He let Trump's words hang heavy in the air before answering. A few people? His voice was low, steady, like a drumbeat cutting through chaos. Tell that to the families who buried loved ones after your rallies turned into battlefields. Tell that to the officers who stood bleeding on the Capitol steps. Tell that to the children who watched their parents break into a sacred chamber of democracy because you told them their enemies weren't human. Trump opened his mouth, but the crowd's shifting energy silenced him. This wasn't applause. It was reckoning, an audible recognition that something undeniable had just been spoken. Denzel continued, each word sharpened with restraint. You call it patriotism. I call it permission. And when you gave that permission, you crossed a line no leader should ever cross. Because words from that chair don't just echo, they ignite. The studio was utterly still now. Cameras zoomed tighter, capturing every flicker of tension. Trump tapped his fingers on the desk, eyes darting from the moderator to the crowd, searching for support that wasn't there. And then Denzel delivered the blow. He leaned in, his voice just above a whisper, but heavy as a verdict. History won't remember excuses. It will remember responsibility. The silence that followed wasn't weakness, it was thunder waiting to break. Trump tried to shake it off with a dismissive wave of his hand. You're an actor, Denzel. You read scripts for a living. I live reality. I built an empire, I ran a country. Don't stand there pretending you understand the weight of leadership. You don't know what it's like to sit in the Oval Office with the world on your shoulders. His voice swelled, but it cracked slightly on the word world, a slip that the cameras didn't miss. The moderator shifted uncomfortably, but Denzel didn't blink. He leaned back in his chair, hands folded calmly, the posture of a man who refused to be baited. His silence stretched long enough to draw the crowd in, making Trump's bluster look even more desperate. Then, with surgical calm, he spoke. You're right about one thing, Denzel said softly. I don't know what it's like to sit in that chair, but I know what it's like to live with the consequences of what's said from that chair. Because I'm not just an actor, I'm a citizen, and I've seen how your words ripple through this country like poison in a river, touching every shore, leaving families drowning in anger and fear. A murmur of agreement rolled through the audience. Trump's eyes narrowed. He muttered, poison? That's ridiculous, but his voice was lower now, his confidence fractured. Denzel pressed on, voice firm but never raised. The Oval Office is supposed to be a lighthouse, guiding people through storms. But under your watch, it became a torch, one that lit fires in the streets, fires in the Capitol, fires in the hearts of people who believed violence was the only language left. He leaned forward, his gaze locked on Trump's, steady and unrelenting. Leadership isn't about ego. It isn't about empire. It's about responsibility. And when your rhetoric turned neighbors into enemies, you abandoned that responsibility. For the first time that night, Trump didn't respond immediately. He clenched his jaw, shifting in his seat, while the audience leaned closer, sensing the balance of power tilting before their eyes. The tension in the studio thickened, like the air before a lightning strike. Trump finally leaned into the microphone, his voice low but sharp, almost a growl. You talk about responsibility, Denzel, but you've never had to make the tough calls. I saved this country. I protected our borders, I put America first. And if people got a little rowdy, that's the price of freedom. You think you can lecture me about leadership? You're nothing but Hollywood pretending to be history. A few gasps slipped through the crowd, but no applause followed. The words felt brittle, like glass about to shatter. Denzel let them settle before answering, not with anger, but with precision. He leaned forward, his tone calm but piercing. Hollywood didn't storm the Capitol. Hollywood didn't chant for blood in the streets. And Hollywood didn't make people believe their democracy was stolen with no evidence to prove it. That was you. Your words, your stage, your performance. The moderator froze, eyes wide, realizing the tables had turned. The word performance stung like a whip, painting Trump as the actor, not the leader. Denzel pressed on, every syllable deliberate. You see, Mr. Trump, freedom isn't about letting chaos run wild. It isn't about unleashing violence and then pretending it's patriotism. Freedom without justice is fraud. Freedom without truth is theater. And you turned the most sacred office in this country into your stage for grievance and rage. The crowd erupted, not with boos or cheers, but with an audible hum, the sound of realization rippling through the room. Trump shifted uncomfortably, his shoulders stiff, his fingers drumming nervously on the desk. For the first time, his smirk faltered. And Denzel, calm as ever, delivered the line that made the cameras zoom in. You wanted history to remember you as a savior. But tonight, it will remember you as a spark that tried to burn the house down. The silence that followed was electric, charged with the weight of words that couldn't be unsaid. The moderator finally raised a hand, trying to steady the storm. Gentlemen, please, let's stay focused. But the plea was drowned by the energy crackling in the room. The audience wasn't restless, they were transfixed. Trump straightened his shoulders, forcing a grin that looked more like a mask than confidence. You talk big, Denzel, but you're just one man. The people are with me. Millions voted for me, marched for me, fought for me. You think your speeches can erase that? You think your little Hollywood monologues carry the same weight as my movement? The words hung heavy, but they didn't land as he hoped. Instead of strength, they reeked of desperation. The crowd's silence was louder than any applause. Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned into the mic, voice calm but unyielding. You're right. You had millions. But you turned those millions into a mob, not a movement. Because a true movement builds. It uplifts. It doesn't tear down. It doesn't leave blood on the steps of democracy. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the audience, then returned to Trump. You say the people are with you. But what people, Mr. Trump? The ones who stormed the Capitol believing your lies? The ones who attacked their own neighbors? Or the millions who now live in fear because your words gave hate a microphone? Trump opened his mouth to cut in, but Denzel's voice sliced through. Leadership isn't about how many follow you. It's about where you lead them. And you led them into chaos. You lit the match, stepped back, and called the fire patriotism. The studio camera zoomed in tight, Trump's jaw clenched, his hand gripping the edge of the desk as if to anchor himself. And then Denzel, steady as a stone, added, movements built on fear collapse. But truth, even whispered, outlasts the loudest lie. The audience erupted, not in applause, but in a roar of approval, voices overlapping, energy shaking the studio walls. Trump's face flushed crimson. He tried to speak, but the sound was swallowed whole. The studio felt less like a debate stage and more like a battlefield of words. Every exchange now carried the weight of history. Trump, his composure slipping, slammed his palm on the desk. The sound echoed like a gavel, but it drew no order, only a sharp intake of breath from the audience. You don't understand power, Denzel. Trump barked, his voice cracking under the strain. You don't know what it's like to have the world watching your every move, waiting for you to slip. I carried this nation on my back. I gave people pride again. And you? You sit there and criticize while America burns. The words rattled, more confession than conviction. Cameras zoomed tighter, catching beads of sweat on his forehead. Denzel tilted his head, calm as if he'd been waiting for this moment. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. Power isn't carrying a nation, Mr. Trump. It's serving it. And America didn't burn because people spoke out. It burned because you lit the fire and then blamed the smoke. Gasps rippled through the studio. Even the moderator froze, caught between the roles of mediator and witness. Denzel's tone sharpened. You talk about pride. But pride without responsibility is poison. And that poison spread, through your speeches, your rallies, your every word that turned fear into fury. You gave people permission to hate, and you called it leadership. Trump's eyes darted toward the crowd, searching for validation, but what he found was stillness. The audience wasn't cheering, they were absorbing, reflecting, shifting. Then Denzel leaned forward, his hands folded, his eyes locked on Trump like a verdict being delivered. America doesn't need a man who builds walls of fear. It needs someone who tears down the lies those walls are built on. And tonight, the people can see the difference. The applause that followed was thunderous, rolling like a wave through the studio. Trump leaned back, visibly shaken, his mouth opening but no words forming. And Denzel, still steady, whispered into the mic, a line that cut deeper because of its quiet weight. History isn't written by those who shout the loudest. It's written by those who stand firm when truth is on trial. The roar of the crowd slowly settled, but the energy in the studio only grew heavier, more electric. Trump leaned forward again, gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles whitened. His voice rose, brittle yet defiant. You think you've got all the answers, Denzel? You don't know politics. You don't know what it takes to keep this country safe, to keep enemies at bay. Without me, America would be weak, just like it is now. The words echoed, but they rang hollow. The cameras captured every flicker of strain on his face, every twitch in his jaw. His usual swagger was cracking, and the audience could see it. Denzel didn't blink. He allowed the silence to stretch, making Trump's words feel smaller, thinner. Then he leaned slightly forward, his voice calm yet cutting. Safety isn't fear. Strength isn't rage. And America isn't weak because of enemies abroad, it's weak because leaders like you turn neighbors into enemies at home. The studio went still, as if everyone was holding their breath. You wanted power so badly, Denzel continued, that you treated truth like an obstacle and justice like a threat. You built your legacy on division, and then called it patriotism. But the truth? The truth is that no nation collapses from outside forces before it's already been broken from within. And you, Mr. Trump, did more breaking than any outsider ever could. The moderator shifted uncomfortably, aware the night was slipping beyond his control. But the crowd, students, activists, even political veterans, sat in rapt silence. Trump tried to speak, but Denzel raised a hand, steady and commanding. You said I don't know politics. Maybe not. But I know people. And people are tired of being pawns in your game of pride and vengeance. They don't need fear to guide them. They need hope. They need honesty. And most of all, they need to believe in one another again. The studio erupted, this time with a standing ovation. The clapping was sharp, relentless, echoing like a verdict. Trump glanced around, his eyes darting desperately, but the sound swallowed him whole. And Denzel, still seated, his voice unwavering, delivered the strike that made the night unforgettable. America doesn't need a king of chaos. It needs a servant of truth. The studio lights seemed brighter now, almost harsh, exposing every line on Trump's face. He shifted in his seat, tugging at his tie as if the air had grown heavier. The crowd's ovation still echoed, and for the first time, he looked smaller, diminished by the weight of words rather than elevated by applause. Trump forced a smirk, but it faltered quickly. You think you're the voice of America, Denzel? You think a few soundbites can erase everything I built? I brought jobs back. I restored pride. I made people believe in greatness again. What have you done? Movies? Speeches? You're a performer, not a leader. The words were sharp, but they carried the ring of desperation. The audience knew it. And so did Denzel. Slowly, he leaned closer to the microphone, his tone even, deliberate, and piercing. Leadership isn't about what you claim to build, it's about what actually lasts. Jobs? Pride? None of that matters if the foundation is rot. And you, Mr. Trump, built everything on lies. Lies don't last. They crack, they crumble, they collapse. And tonight, you're watching it happen. The silence that followed was different this time, not shock, but agreement. A collective nod of realization hung in the air. Denzel pressed on, his cadence steady, like a hammer striking nail after nail. You talk about greatness. But greatness doesn't come from inflating yourself, it comes from lifting others. It doesn't come from silencing voices, it comes from listening. And it doesn't come from dividing a nation to feed your ego, it comes from uniting people even when it costs you. Trump's lips tightened, but his eyes betrayed the flicker of something rare, doubt. The cameras caught it, and the image would be replayed across networks for weeks, Trump cornered, his bravado cracking under the weight of truth. And then, with a calm so steady it rattled the room, Denzel delivered the line that sealed the night. You built a brand. I'm talking about a nation. And a nation will always outlast a brand. The crowd exploded, some rising to their feet, others pounding the armrests of their chairs. The noise was thunderous, undeniable. Trump slumped back, his jaw tight, but the look in his eyes revealed the truth. He had been outmatched, not by volume, but by conviction. The studio felt less like a debate stage now and more like a courtroom, with the crowd serving as jury and history as the judge. Every camera lens tightened its focus, capturing the moment that would be replayed in headlines, in whispers, in classrooms for years to come. Trump leaned forward one last time, his voice hoarse but defiant. You can grandstand all you want, Denzel. You'll never erase me. My name, my legacy, it's already written. The words came heavy, but the weight no longer carried. The audience didn't stir. They had heard this refrain before, and tonight it sounded like the hollow echo of a man clinging to what was slipping away. Denzel inhaled slowly, his expression calm, almost serene. Then he spoke with a clarity that cut through the noise like glass breaking in the dark. Legacies aren't written by the ones who shout the loudest, Mr. Trump. They're written by the lives touched, the wounds healed, the bridges built. Your name may be remembered, but not as you hope. Not as a savior. Not as a builder. But as a warning. The crowd erupted, some standing, some clapping, others chanting his words back like a refrain. The moderator tried to regain order, but the moment had escaped him. The night now belonged to something larger. Trump sat back, his face pale, his eyes darting, the weight of silence heavier than any roar of applause. He muttered something under his breath, but the microphones didn't catch it. Denzel, still steady, still unshaken, offered his final line, one that would echo beyond the walls of the studio. History doesn't belong to those who weaponize fear. It belongs to those who plant hope. The crowd's roar was deafening, a wall of sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the studio. And as the lights dimmed, the cameras lingered on Trump's slumped figure and Denzel's unyielding calm, a final image that captured not just a debate, but a reckoning. This wasn't just an argument, it was the moment when truth silenced deception. Trump's rhetoric may fuel violence, but Denzel's calm yet cutting words became the voice of hope and courage. Remember, history's strongest moments aren't written with applause, they're written with echoes of truth. So, which voice will America choose? That answer is yours.